Hi, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from the Jewish Stand. I am your host, the co-founder and director of the Jewish Stand. I'm Shmuel von Weisel. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to another episode of the Stand&Talk episode. It's been a while, but we have a very special guest today, Shai Rosengarten, who is the co-CEO of Tirtzu, an organization based in Israel, who we'll hear about a bit more. Thank you so much for coming on, Shai. Just quickly a bit about Shai before we get started. He was born in 1994. He's married with 2 children. He's currently serving in the reserves in the IDF, in the Navy. You live in Ashdod. You served as a control officer and operations officer in the Navy. You hold a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering and a master's degree in public policy from Tel Aviv University. Shai started his journey with Tirtzu movement in 2018. Previously served as the head of the student department and deputy chairman. What an illustrious career and background. Thank you so much, Shai, for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm fine, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, a bit of a background of how I know you is we met before the 7th of October when I was in Israel and I was looking for things to volunteer. We'll hear more about Tirtzu, but I remember this was before 7th of October. It was a very different world back then, and it brings us back to a different time. So most of us in the UK haven't heard of Tirtzu. Perhaps could you explain to us who or what is Tirtzu and what it is you're doing?
Tirtzu was founded in 2006 by students that have learned in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. They saw everywhere lecturers and faculty speaking against the state of Israel from within, not appreciating what they have, speaking against the military, against what we are doing during the Second Lebanon War. They saw the hideous crime of the expulsion from Gaza Strip in 2005, and they thought we must do something about this. We must take back Zionism and introduce the Zionism to the 21st century. This is why those students that was led by Ronen Shoval and Erez Tadmor opened this great organization called Tirtzu. Now, of course, when we are in 2025, almost 20 years, Tirtzu developed to be much, much greater than only a student organization. We have, of course, branches all over the country, both in faculties, in colleges, campuses, but also in communities across country. We also have dealing with the media in Israel, the judicial system. We're doing lots and lots of activities, protests, and supporting soldiers, wounded soldiers, grieving families, planting thousands of trees all over Israel, monitoring anarchist organizations operating in Israel against our country. So we are like overall grassroots organization, and I'm very proud to be part of this magnificent group, to lead this great group. And I must say that Israel without Tirtzu was not the same from what it is now.
Yeah, we have a lot to unpack there. But perhaps there's more of a basic question, is Tirtzu the name? So could you maybe touch a bit more about where you got the name from? What does it mean? What does it mean to you?
Yes, actually, it's pretty intuitive for the Hebrew-speaking in Israel. Im Tirtzu is like, if you wills it. This is a phrase of Theodor Herzl, one of the founding fathers of Zionism. He is our symbol. And what he meant that if you want something and you really believe it, it will not remain as a dream. You can do it. You can fulfill it in reality. of course, he spoke about what he called the Judenstaat, the Jewish state. And he said once in 1898 that he established, or 97, that he established the Jewish state in Basel during the first Jewish Congress. And 50 years after that, because of his belief, we were able to establish the State of Israel. So this is a very strong phrase, and this is why we are using it as our name.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of how one person can make such a difference, and how just taking responsibility, but being, touching
Yes,
on such an important thing, the returning of the Jewish people to its homeland. And it's so big sometimes, and you think it's far above you, and who am I, just a small person, was he a journalist? What can I do?
yeah,
And yeah, he created a massive movement, obviously that was building up in the background, but he touched on what it was. And sometimes that's all you need. So it kind of really gives an amazing parable to today, which was what we're doing, right? Which is keep on trying to find that spark again and relight it. But then it kind of gives you a question, right? So you said about the Zionist values in Israel and academia, etc. But we already have a state of Israel, right? Zionism, Theodor Herzl, Zionism for him was to create a state of Israel. We have a
yeah.
state of Israel today. Do we still need Zionism?
Yes, this is a very important question, and I'm always answering it when I going to speak with students or pre-military schools. You need to understand that, of course, we wanted to establish the Jewish state, but we also want to preserve it, to nurture it, to defend this country from the threats, both physical threats and spiritual or ideological threats. Of course, the physical threats are things we know from the wars we are waging against terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah, but we also have ideological threats. Those we have two main threats in the ideological arena. We have post-Zionism and anti-Zionism. And post-Zionism saying, okay, you established, like you said, you established the Jewish state. It was good for its time. Now you can develop to the next stage, to be something like the United States of the Middle East, to get all the migrants, to blend with the Arabs, and you don't need basically a Jewish state, just some kind of blur democracy. The other ideological threat is more famous, the anti-Zionism, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this threat. Those
Yeah,
people,
unfortunately, yeah.
those groups of people saying that the whole Zionism initiative is a racist colonial sin, and Israel is a crime state that should not exist. So Tirtzu was meant to fight those ideological threats, but this is very important to say, from within Israel. We're mostly operating inside Israel, inside Israeli society, against anti-Zionism and post-Zionism threats coming from the academia, from the media, from the cultural institutions, from the judicial system, from foreign organizations operating in Israel. Yes, we are doing a little bit of hasbara in the diaspora, but our main activity is from inside, to protect the Jewish state, this great miracle to stay alive. And if we will not do it, and we'll say, okay, we just established this state, I'm very afraid it will not be exist in the decades to come. So we must preserve these ideas, those ideas for our future.
You definitely see it, absolutely. You definitely see how in university today, when we were fighting it on campus, anti-Zionism, we don't really hear post-Zionism so much. We mainly hear anti-Zionism. That's what's really fashionable. You know, the classic from the river to the sea,
Yeah.
these types of ideologies, they are very loud. Whether they're the majority or minority, that's a big debate to have. One of the big challenges that we've had, though, is always that whenever we do it, you sort of have to, whenever we do these advocacy tables, standing up for our Jewish identity, that's also involved with standing up for Israel, and that's what the Jewish Stand is also
Mhm.
more about, rather than just purely Israel advocacy. But you end up becoming this sort of spokesperson for the Israeli government, right? If you are Zionist, that means you must be right wing, right? Do you think you would be considered right wing or left wing, or is there something to do with that on the political side? Is there a divide on that section for post Zionist, anti Zionists on the right left, or is it something else that we're missing?
Tirtzu is more like considered to be right organization, although we are not categorized our movement as right or left, but as a Zionist organization and an apolitical movement. But yes, it will. I would lie if I say that we are not preserved as right organization, and it doesn't bothers me so much. The right wing in Israel, those groups are more like believing in the cause of this, of the Jewish values of this state, of the idea of Jewish state. The left in Israel is much more progressive, globalist, thinking about what I said earlier about post-Zionism, saying that Israel should be something like the United States, some kind of a multicultural country inside the Middle East. But the right in Israel is usually more connected to our roots, to the religious roots and our destiny as a people, as a distinguished nation, Jewish nation upon earth. This is why usually we're more collaborating and doing initiatives with parties that are considered to be right wing. But we'll say that also if there's any kind of student or any citizen of Israel who consider himself left or Zionist left and support our cause, course, we will embrace him and will say to him that he is more than welcome to join. So it's more in the perspective of ideology than in saying that you're right or left. It's really about ideology. This is what we are mainly trying to accomplish.
Yeah, in other words, it's not that you are advocating for a political movement or organization or party. It's you are a Zionist organization, and if there is
Yeah,
a political party that aligns with you, be that a right wing or a left wing, then you would be supportive of them. I
correct,
mean, we
correct.
hear about right wing being more uh, uh, um, strong in their national views and stuff like that. Is there a place for a left wing party in Israel that could be considered Zionist, that could be in opposition to the government? Can that exist? Does it exist even?
Yes, it can exist. Today is more like Benny Gantz or Victor Lieberman. You can say some of them are more central. They are opposition, okay, but in Israel, and I don't know exactly how it goes in the UK or in other places, but in Israel, uh, left and right is more about the security needs. But I know that in the big world is also about economy, capitalism versus socialism. And so it really depends what you define as right or left. The founding fathers of Israel, most of them were left economically. They were more socialist than
Yeah.
capitalist.
The kibbutzim,
And
they were
the
the
kibbutzim, the
communes. Yeah.
kibbutzim, the Mapai Party, השומר, and ההגנה, and all those organizations, the Histadrut, of course, they were all socialists, but they believed in the cause of building a Jewish nation, a Jewish state, in building settlements, conquering back our land, our historic land. So if you are defined right or left with economic tools, you absolutely can see more of Zionistic left movements and right movements. If you are talking about security needs, usually as right as you go is being more Zionist. This is really in general, but it's really because the right wing in Israel is, like I said, more connected to the Jewish roots of the states of Israel. And Zionism in itself, we must say, this is the idea of building a Jewish state for the Jewish people in the land of Israel. So you want to preserve this idea of Jewish state, you can argue what this is all about, what you call Jewish state, but you must agree to this general idea of Jewish state and to understand that the state of the land of Israel, this is the homeland of the Jewish people, and those are values that are more and more being identified with the right in Israel more than the left, who says the land of Israel is just another piece of land, and the Jewish people are not so unique, and this is not a good value to have a Jewish state, which can be maybe a racist idea. You must have a general population, mixed population that can be more globalist and progressive, and this is the situation we have right now.
Right. So we know the far right around the world is also anti-Semitic, good old-fashioned. Like Nick Fuentes with Tucker Carlson and stuff like that. That's classic. But there's also more on the far left that people don't like to talk about so much. And of course, we have to mention the recent election in New York by Zohan Mamdani, of which 30% of Jews voted for him. Right. So there does seem to be a divide.
In general, progressive Jewish people, the progressive Jewry of the United States and Europe tend to be less Zionist. This is very unfortunate and very sad to say, but this is the truth and we must say it, because progressive ideas tend to be more globalist, and as you become more globalist, you are more like against the idea of nation states, and the Zionist idea, this is by definition a national idea of a nation state of the Jewish people. This is coming in total contrast to the idea of the progressive globalist idea of building multicultural society all over the world.
I think maybe it's also important, very important to point out that on the university side here in England, when we were activists for Israel, we had left-wing people and right-wing people. We had also religious and secular, and that's probably a different point that we can talk about, also another divide in Israel. But I also have writers on the left who were supportive of the UK government, or currently of Labour, and we also even had a podcast here of someone who's very much a Zionist and considered himself centre-left. I think it's very much a forgotten and left behind population of young Jews also who are probably associated more with the left. And what is Zionism for them? How does it look like? I highly recommend my audience to watch that video, the podcast, if you haven't yet, with Sam Ice, and talking about how there was a deep political problem once the kibbutzim moved away from the kibbutzim into the urban and they started becoming a bit more capitalist. And what is Zionist left? And it's sort of a question that's just been kind of left behind, but maybe that's a time for a different podcast. I'd like to maybe just touch on this one more point about the anarchists. Not that I'm calling these people out, but there are organizations in Israel like B'Tselem, in Israeli media like Haaretz, and also Israeli academics, also in the UK. They come to the UK sometimes, and these people are often quoted by anti-Israel demonstrators. They use them as proof of Israel's evil nature. they sometimes use the very same terminology we hear on campuses in the UK, speaking in Hebrew, and then that gets picked up. And for us standing here, at the table, a lot of us aren't necessarily so connected to Israel, knowing everything that's going on. A lot of us in the diaspora, especially for the young Jews, who primarily engage with Israel through social media, study, or travel. It's very difficult for us to respond to these quotations and these proofs that these anti-Zionist people bring. So how do you respond to them, and how would you offer for us in the diaspora to respond?
You mean how we respond to them, to their activities inside Israel or
Yeah, and also
outside?
their claims. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, this is very important to say right in the beginning. Left-wing organizations have, of course, the right to operate inside Israel and outside Israel, and we embrace our differences in Israel, in the Israeli politics. But the whole difference, and this is very important, is between left organizations that have the mandate from the Israeli population to operate in their own behalf, what they are thinking to be good or wrong. This is fine because we can, let's say, manage our own politics within. We have people that are believe in the two-state solution, and we have the majority in Israel believing in one state of Jewish state, let's say, okay? But this is the very legitimate conversation and argument. But once you have organizations that are operating inside Israel and getting funded by foreign governments, they don't get the mandate from the people inside Israel, but they are getting all their funds from governments abroad, outside of Israel, trying to influence our policy and trying to tie the hands of our soldiers during war, trying to incite against Israel and against the things we are doing, and defame our people, our soldiers, our country, our army. This is something that we cannot bear, and we will not bear. We will not be tolerant for those kind of organizations, like you said, B'Tselem, Breaking the Silence, Doctors for Human Rights, and so, Yesh Din and Adala. All of those organizations are operating inside Israel, but they are not getting their mandate from the Israeli people, but from outside. And they are not like I said, they're not believing in the Zionist values. They are more they have minority of post-Zionist organizations, and most of them are total anti-Zionist. They say they want the best for Israel, but they don't want Israel to be a Jewish state. So maybe they will agree to preserve the name Israel, but actually they want to destroy all our Jewish national content. This is why we are fighting them. And we are doing it, first and foremost, by exposure, because most of the people, the citizens of Israel, didn't know about the existence of those organizations. They wasn't aware about this problem. And for years, Tirtzu fight to expose those organizations, what they are doing, how they get funded, what are their goals. As now in Israel, most of the people in Israel know what those organizations are, what they're really all about, what they're trying to do to our country. Once you expose those organizations, this is much easier to fight against them, because you have more of public pressure on the elected officials to legislate a piece of legislation against those organizations. Actually, right now in the Knesset, Tirtzu is pushing some of the Knesset members to pass a law for heavy taxations over those kind of organizations operating inside Israel but getting funded by foreign government. And so this is very two stages that Tirtzu is doing. First is exposing, second is acting by legislation, publishing materials, and even protesting. It's fun because 2 weeks ago I was in a pro-Israeli summit in Budapest, Hungary. I participated as the representative of Tirtzu with other people, representatives and elected officials from Israel, like the Minister of Education and some Knesset members and others, and the son of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Yair Netanyahu, was there also. I was there mainly to talk on a panel about modern anti-Semitism, and this is really what I talked about how anti-Semitism in the postmodern area in the 21st century is disguised as an anti-Zionist and not as anti-Jewish, but this is all the same, because this is not cool to be anti-Semite today. So what they're saying is, of course, we love Jews. We are all Jew lovers, but we just against the state of Israel, the Zionist colonial occupation. And this is the thing we must expose. This is what I try to expose there. I came there with a lot of data about their funds, what they're getting from the EU and from other countries. and I talked about the organization that get funded from those European countries, what they are actually doing in Israel and how they actually support terrorism. And so this is a constant struggle, and we are investing a lot in it. Sorry.
It's it's nothing new. From what I understand, it's like it's in every country, right? There's today this non-state actors that are funded by foreign governments. It's England's going through a Chinese espionage scandal, and America's got problems with Russian involvement. So every country has its non-state actors that are involved, and I think it's really important that you point that out.
I must tell you that in Israel, this is far more than any other country, I think, in the world. In Israel, you have dozens of those organizations operating inside our country. I don't know about other countries dealing with such a scale of organizations that are operating inside.
And I think it's also so important because it's on such an existential level. Because because what does it mean to be an anti-Zionist? It's not just someone who disapproves of the Israeli government. It's someone who doesn't want Israel to be Israel. That's a very existential thing. So it becomes even more dangerous to have such fringe movements with so much influence and funded by foreign governments. So it's difficult for us here in the UK to respond to them for the most part, really. But perhaps maybe how would you suggest that we navigate these Zionist beliefs in Jewish self-determination, but also with genuine care for human rights, because that's what these organizations purport to expose, right? That we don't care about human rights and stuff like that. So how can we balance that? How can we navigate being such Zionists, but also show that we have genuine care for human rights, right? And obviously sympathy with the Palestinians and the Arab people living in Israel.
You mean how we fight anti-Zionist organizations and also proving that we're in favor of human rights? But yeah. I ran 7. When you are from the beginning things that you need to prove to someone that you are that you cares about human rights and human conditions and starving people or you're against war crimes or something, you already lost. Israel and this is a very, very important point. Israel is a bright star in the Middle East. We are the most developed democracy in the Middle East. We have let's say we have the most of human rights anyone can get in thousands of miles around surrounding us, and we do not need to prove anyone what Israel is doing. You just need to visit Israel to see what we are doing. So it's okay to try and explain people that, of course, we are human lovers. We, of course, care about people and nations and starving kids and so and so. But we don't need to apologize about everything. We are defending ourselves. We are doing what we must do to preserve this bright democracy in the Middle East, and to defend our country against foreign, let's say, foreign threats and threats from within, against anarchists, against pro-terrorists, against terrorists themselves. It doesn't make us let's say the monsters that are trying to draw us. And I think really that those people who try to defame Israel again and again and again, calling us racist, genocidal, colonialist, I don't know what, they're already lost. And yes, I'm in favor of talking and doing hasbara and speaking about Israel, showing to the, let's say, to the common people what Israel is all about. But this, let's say, this hardcore of anti-Semites, and those are hardcore anti-Semites, I wouldn't try to invest so much to explain them anything. So I would never come to a conversation or a debate trying in the initial state to initial stage to justify myself and say and explain why I'm not a killer. I would come and say I'm the most. My country is the most amazing thing that's happened in the Middle East, and you must ask yourself if you prefer to visit in Tel Aviv or in Ramallah. And we both know the answer. You would be terrified to visit in Ramallah or in Nablus or in Bethlehem under the PLO regime, but you can go to Tel Aviv to feel very safe, party, to visit cafes and restaurants. So we all know who's the right side.
It's such a powerful point. I mean, I'm remembering that Coldplay concert where Chris Martin brought up was it two Israeli women onto the stage, two of his fans, and then he asked them where they're from, and they said Israel, and then he said, "I welcome you as humans," right? And that's the stage where we're at. Do we have to prove we're humans now?
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy. Do we have to prove that we're not genocidal? We have to prove that we, the people who have so much investment in freedom in Israel, in such a liberal country, we have to prove that we don't do genocide, and we're up against Hamas and Hezbollah. Like, is this really what we need to do right now? It's like you say, it's starting off losing, and a lot of these people want to believe in these lies Israel does genocide because, like you say, maybe they do have something out there for the Jewish state, because they might be anti-Semitic at its core. I'm assuming, obviously, there are a lot of people who generally don't know, and they hear the news being spun in such a way, and they don't hear an opposing side, and that's a different argument to have on hasbara and the efficiency of it. But it's like you say, it's so important to hear that how to argue, first of all, with these people is you don't argue from a position of trying to prove that you're not a killer. It's
Yeah.
not you. Israel is not the side that perpetrated 7th of October in such a horrible, horrible way. Israel is the side that actually fought in Gaza in such a humane way, right? With one of the lowest civilian deaths. Obviously, like we say, every civilian death is a tragedy, and we wish it could have been avoided. But it has been fought in such a uniquely humane way, with one of the lowest civilian to combat and death ratios in urban warfare in modern history. And it's something that we just need to be accepting, that that's what we come from. That's the pride that we hold within ourselves, that we can be so humane, as much as war is a tragedy. But it's sometimes, especially to get the hostages back, and it's now that they're home, we realize how important it was. We need to fight humanely, but we do need to fight. And I think that's a really good point. But I'd like to move on to our next questions. So you've risen through grassroots activism and campus leadership into a national role, all while serving in the IDF Naval Reserves. So you have a lot of lived experience in this. So on your experience, how do you believe that Zionist theory becomes lived, practical, political action?
Well, I think that every kind of activity you're doing in Israel, supporting the Israeli idea, or fulfilling the Israeli dream or the Zionist dream, strengthening our country, even if this is a daily thing, like running your business, raising your family, studying, trying to research about something. This is very new. Everything can be considered as a Zionist action if we're doing it for the cause of Zionism. But if we're talking more about, let's say, the core of political activity, of course, that advocating for the Israeli values, the Zionist values inside Israel and outside Israel, this is something that is very important for us, for the Zionist values. Also advocating to the young generation in universities, in campuses. In Israel, we have the privilege to have our boots on the ground, as they say, to build our own settlements, cities, homes and towns. To do those things, of course, this is the most Zionist thing you can do. As people from abroad, you can come to visit us or to make an aliyah, of course. And you know that there are so many options: serving the army, defending your country, building a startup. So the most important thing is to believe in our cause. Once you're believing in the cause and in the Zionist values, Zionist ideology, everything you are doing, if this is for the, let's say, if it is come from the right place in your heart, this is the practical thing you're doing for the Jewish state. Whether it's even sending money to organizations, or to Kakal, or to other funds, and you just need to be aware of the situation. Be aware to have this sense of shlichut, trying to do your best for this country, and this is all about. This is the thing. This is all about Zionism for me.
So that's so much you can do inside Israel, apart from sending funds and of course advocating. What does a Zionist Jew look like outside of Israel today?
Like I said, advocating for Israel, it's a lot, especially in difficult times like today, those recent years, and saying the right things in the right places, to take care of how Israel is preserved, in everyone, of course, in their own influence and status in the society. whether it's talking in the media, whether it's talking in the academia or in the cultural institutions. So it's really defending your home, even though you're not living in Israel every day in your day life. This is defending your home. And like I said, you can send funds, you can come and serve in the army, although you're not living in Israel. You can protest, you can vote to the right parties in Europe and the United States that are the most supportive for Israel, for Israeli cause. This is very, very important. We know that unfortunately we have so many Jewish groups over the world that are not, let's say that they're not voting for the, let's say, the most pro-Israeli parties, and those who are voting for the pro-Zionist, pro-Israeli parties doing us a lot of favor. You just need to be aware to care about your country and find many ways to help us here in Israel. To be Zionist is to really try today to protect and nurture and preserve this great country of Israel.
This is a question submitted by one of the readers. I'm sure you've been aware of the Aston Villa versus Maccabi Tel Aviv situation. I think this is very directly to what you were just saying about being a Zionist. So in that situation, the police in Birmingham and Aston Villa, they released and enforced a statement that no fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv were allowed to attend the European match. This has been held to be anti-Semitic as much as anti-Zionist, and this was condemned across the board even by UK senior political leaders, like including the Prime Minister and more. So one of our readers asks a really good question is, how should those in the diaspora respond to such happenings, right? We care about Judaism, we care about Israel, and do you believe them to be both anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic?
First of all, I don't know the small details about this event. Maybe it's coming from anti-Semitism, values, beliefs. Maybe it's just from, countries that are no longer can protect the Jewish people inside, or Jewish visitors, which is of course terrible news for not only for the Jewish people, but for the whole Western society that is based on protecting people, no matter what their own religion or beliefs or status. I think that the diaspora Jews had a lot to do because they have lots of political force, political gravity. They can use it. They can vote for those representatives and parties who they believe can actually change changes reality to take care of those anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish initiatives, to be aware of what's the situation for the Jewish people in their area, and they can also contribute to support those representatives and institutions that are more supportive for Jewish people. I think those are things that the Jewish people all over the world traditionally doing. There are groups that all the time trying to be more related to the goyim, to the other nations of the world, and abandoning their heritage and their brothers that are really proud of what we are. And this is a very sad thing. But if you want to fight, you need to organize, maybe build your own organizations abroad, trying to build as much as political force that you can, or as, let's say, financial force that you can have, and use this, because we know that other organizations from the other side, those traditional anti-Semitism and anti-Israelis, using the same methods. They are building their own groups, political bodies, financial bodies and trying to harm Israel as much as they can. This is the modern world. We're no longer using sword and shields. We are using political, let's say, political arrows, political institutions, political agendas in parties and groups. This is what we can do, and we must do it well because we have no other choice.
It's really such an important thing to hear because, especially in the UK, where the issue of who is our ally, right, who is our friend today, is very difficult, right? We have Tommy Robinson who went to Israel and he was welcomed by many Israelis, but here in the UK, a lot of British Jews, don't trust him. Famously, the Board of Deputies tweeted against Tommy Robinson, and I know there's a big mixture of young Jews who support him. And also a lot of Jews who don't. And it's difficult because, especially in the world we saw after 7th of October, how easy it was for the anti-Israel movement to take over the narrative. It was seconds, and we had already lost it. We started trying to figure out who our friends were. And that's what's so difficult in fighting, right? But it also goes to mention that, yes, we might be fighting in what seems like it's alone, in what we're alone. Sometimes you've got to do that first stand. You're going to do that first little step into it. And you realize then that you've actually got a lot more friends, a lot more people standing up for you, because there are a lot of British people, and also probably down in America as well, who are still very much supportive of Jews and still very much supportive of Israel and want to hear proud Jewish voices. And it's so important to hear this type of backbone coming from Israel to give us that push, so that we know that when we stand up for Israel, then people could hear. But I guess this leads us right directly to our last question, and we always like to leave things positively. So looking forward, right? We talked about the past, talked about the present, and now the future. For young Jews who feel proud of their Jewish identity and the state of Israel, and who want to make a difference, what is your vision for how Israel, Zionism, and Jewish peoplehood should and can evolve over the next 10 years? And what would you like to see changed? What do you believe young Jews can realistically contribute to making that vision a reality?
Well, I think that it will be a very boring answer, but this is really the truth. Zionism is not, from my point of view, this is not a revolutionary idea. This is a very traditional idea. And what we're trying to do, as Herzl say, by the way, is to go back to our roots, to our traditional roots. So as a traditional ideological idea and not revolutionary, we're not trying to do some revolutions in the future. What we need to do is to preserve what we already achieved and nurturing it and make it more and more resilient, rich, strong. What I want to see 10 years from now or 20 years from now is just more of the same. Maybe this is not so enthusiastic, but I think this is the most important thing. I want greater Israel, like stronger Israel, more financially advanced Israel, bigger population, bigger families, maybe bigger army, but maybe bigger peace for us. We just need to preserve what we got, and we got a lot. We need to become more and more related to our tradition. Maybe even if God wills, we'll have again let's say, our religious rights in Jerusalem, in the Temple Mount again. So it's not just that we must have revolutionary ideas about we will change it all from when we start again. No, Zionism did a lot for the world. We must take care of it, and when we just need to support it this idea enough, and that enough people will care about it, not only in saying words, but doing things for it, building more towns, more settlements, bit by bit, more businesses, as I said earlier, more families, bigger families, doing more and more and more, and that Israel would become stronger and stronger. And if you are living abroad, you ask yourself what you can do. If you're staying abroad, build your own or join your political body or organization or young organization advocating for Israel, using your political and financial force for Israel. If you want to do something else, you can make aliyah to Israel, build your own family here, building your own business here, maybe serve in the army, in the IDF. And if tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jewish people from diaspora will do it, it will be a big change for us. I'm not demanding for people to try and be Superman. No, just need to be a good citizen of the Western society and a good Jewish people to come here and to support what we are doing.
I think it's so beautiful because you say it's boring, right? And especially after what's going on in Israel, every day something else crazy is happening.
I don't want to frighten anyone. Once you come here, you see that we have in one day enough media news for a whole year in the United Kingdom or in other places of the world. We have enough wars for everyone else.
Yeah, there's plenty of happening, and that's a really amazing message to end on. Shai, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I hope to have you more often on again. Thank you everyone for
My
watching
pleasure.
and listening, and hopefully I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.